The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was blood on a white coat, and the second was the face I had spent half my life trying to forget. For one terrifying moment, I thought I had died and awakened inside an old memory. Then the pain surged through my ribs, the emergency room lights sharpened above me, and the woman leaning over my stretcher quietly said my name as though she had carried it with her for 20 years. Before we continue, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because sometimes the person who once broke your heart returns at the exact moment your life needs saving. My name is Everett Cole, and until that Tuesday morning, I had convinced myself that the past was nothing more than a locked room. I was 40 years old, recently divorced, and living alone in the same Pennsylvania town where I had once believed my entire future would begin. Instead, my life had become a series of quiet routines. I repaired antique furniture in a narrow workshop behind my house, called my mother every Sunday, and avoided the streets surrounding Briarwood High School whenever possible. That morning, I had been delivering a restored oak cabinet to a local library when a delivery van ran a red light. I swerved, struck a concrete barrier, and woke inside an ambulance with a fractured wrist, cracked ribs, and blood running down the side of my face. By the time I reached the emergency room, I was drifting in and out of consciousness. Nurses moved around me, machines beeped, and someone cut through my shirt. Then a familiar voice ordered a scan, asked about my breathing, and told me to stay awake. When my vision finally cleared, I found myself staring at Dr. Laurel Bennett, the girl whose photograph had once been hidden inside every notebook I owned. Laurel had been my high school crush, although the word crush never captured what she had meant to me. She had been sunlight in human form, confident without being cruel, brilliant without making others feel small. I had been the quiet boy who worked after school at his father's hardware store and spent lunch periods sketching furniture designs in the library. Laurel had spoken to everyone, but she had been especially kind to me. She borrowed pencils she never returned, asked for help with physics, and once sat beside me during a rain-delayed football game because she noticed I was alone. Those small moments became enormous in my young mind. During senior year, I wrote her a letter telling her how I felt. I did not ask her to love me. I only asked whether she might meet me after graduation beneath the old maple tree behind the gym. I waited there for nearly 3 hours in the bright June afternoon, holding 2 lemon sodas that slowly grew warm. Laurel never came. The following week, I heard she had left town early for a summer medical program. She never answered the letter, and I carried the humiliation into adulthood like a scar no one else could see. Now she stood over me in the emergency room, older and somehow more beautiful, with faint lines beside her eyes and exhaustion beneath them. Her hands remained steady as she examined my injuries, but I noticed the moment recognition passed across her face. She studied me for several seconds, then leaned closer while a nurse adjusted the monitor. In a voice barely louder than a breath, she whispered, "Do you remember me?" I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the question. I remembered the silver bracelet she wore at graduation, the way she tucked her hair behind one ear when nervous, and the empty space beneath that maple tree where she was supposed to have stood. Yet I simply nodded. Something fragile moved through her expression, but before either of us could say more, my blood pressure dropped. The room filled with urgent motion. Laurel ordered additional imaging, and within minutes she discovered internal bleeding near my spleen. The accident had been more serious than the paramedics realized. She explained that I needed immediate surgery, and as fear tightened around my chest, she placed her hand over mine. She promised she would not leave until I was stable. I believed her, even though a younger version of me wanted to remind her that she had made me wait before. The surgery lasted 2 hours. When I awakened late that afternoon, sunlight poured through the hospital window, turning the room pale gold. My mother sat beside the bed, gripping my uninjured hand with tears in her eyes. Laurel stood near the doorway speaking with another physician. She had helped stop the bleeding and had remained through the entire procedure, even though another surgeon had taken over. My mother recognized her immediately. In high school, she had always liked Laurel and had once teased me that I smiled differently whenever Laurel's name was mentioned. When Laurel approached the bed, my mother thanked her repeatedly, but Laurel looked uncomfortable with the praise. She said the team had saved me, not her alone. Then her gaze settled on my face, and I saw something I had never expected from her: guilt. My mother stepped into the hallway to call my sister, leaving Laurel and me alone in the bright room. She asked how much pain I felt, checked the medication line, and then admitted she had often wondered what happened to me. The words stirred an old bitterness I thought I had outgrown. I told her I had remained exactly where she left me, beneath a maple tree with 2 warm sodas and more hope than dignity. Laurel's face lost its color. She pulled a chair close to my bed and sat down slowly. She told me she had never received my letter before graduation. Her father had found it first. At the time, Laurel's mother was dying from an aggressive illness, and her family was falling apart behind closed doors. Her father believed any distraction would destroy Laurel's chance of earning a scholarship, so he hid the letter and rushed her out of town for the summer program. Laurel discovered it months later inside a box of school papers, unopened but stained by water from a leaking basement pipe. By then, she had started college in another state. She wrote back to the return address, but my family had moved after my father's hardware store went bankrupt. The letter came back undelivered. Laurel said she searched for me online years later but found only an outdated business listing. Eventually, she assumed I had built a happy life somewhere else. I listened without speaking, unsure whether the explanation comforted me or made the lost years feel heavier. All that pain had grown from 2 letters that never reached their destination. Over the next 3 days, Laurel checked on me whenever her schedule allowed. She never stayed long, but each visit loosened something inside me. I learned she had returned to town 6 months earlier to lead the emergency department. She had never married. For years, she had cared for her mother, completed medical training, and moved from hospital to hospital, believing that achievement could silence grief. It never did. Her mother's death had pushed her toward medicine, but it had also taught her to keep people at a distance. She admitted she had become excellent at saving strangers while failing to build a life beyond hospital walls. I told her about my marriage, which had ended not because of betrayal but because my former wife grew tired of living beside a man who rarely revealed what he felt. She had once accused me of treating disappointment like a private religion. At the time, I thought she was being cruel. Lying in that hospital bed, I finally understood that she had been describing the truth. I had turned one unanswered letter into evidence that love always disappeared without explanation. I had punished people who came later for a wound they did not create. The most unexpected turning point came on the morning I was scheduled to leave the hospital. Laurel entered my room without her white coat. She wore a simple gray sweater and held a weathered envelope inside a clear plastic sleeve. The handwriting on the front was hers, and beneath my old address was a faded postal stamp marking it undeliverable. She had kept the letter for 22 years. Her hands trembled as she gave it to me. Inside, 18-year-old Laurel had written that she was sorry she missed the maple tree, that her family was facing something she did not know how to explain, and that she had thought about me during every lecture of her summer program. She wrote that I had always made her feel seen without demanding anything from her. Near the end, she confessed that she had planned to meet me after graduation even before finding my letter because she had feelings for me too. I read those lines twice, then a third time. The boy I had been seemed to rise inside me, still waiting beneath the summer leaves. For years, I had believed he had been rejected. In truth, he had simply been lost between fear, grief, and bad timing that I expected anger to follow, but instead I began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the helpless tears of someone mourning a life that might have existed. Laurel cried too. She apologized for a silence that had not been entirely her fault, and I apologized for turning her into a villain inside a story she never knew she was part of. We could not recover the years, and neither of us pretended otherwise. We had made choices, loved other people, suffered losses, and become strangers. Forgiveness did not erase that. It simply stopped the past from controlling what happened next. Laurel asked whether I would be willing to meet her beneath the maple tree after I recovered. She said she would bring the lemon sodas this time. I smiled for the first time since the accident and told her she was more than 2 decades late. She said she knew, but she hoped late was not the same as never. 6 weeks later, on a clear Saturday afternoon, I walked toward Briarwood High School with my wrist still wrapped and my ribs nearly healed. The campus had changed, but the maple tree remained behind the gym, larger and scarred by time. Laurel was already there. She stood beneath the branches holding 2 glass bottles of lemon soda. For a second, I saw both versions of her at once, the accomplished physician who had saved my life and the 17-year-old girl who once borrowed my pencils. We sat beneath the tree and spoke for hours. There were no grand promises. We did not pretend that unfinished teenage love automatically became an adult future. We simply chose honesty. Laurel told me about the loneliness she hid beneath competence. I told her how fear had shaped my marriage and my friendships. We agreed that whatever came next would not be built on memory alone. It would be built on patience, truth, and the courage to show up. During the months that followed, Laurel visited my workshop on her days off, and I learned to stop hiding whenever my feelings became uncomfortable. She learned that asking for support did not make her weak. We restored an old dining table together for the hospital's family waiting room, sanding away decades of damage until the grain appeared again. The table became a quiet symbol between us. Some things could not be returned to their original condition, but they could still become beautiful through careful work. My mother watched our friendship deepen with cautious joy. Laurel's father, now elderly and ill, eventually asked to see me. He apologized for hiding my letter and admitted that grief had made him controlling. I did not excuse what he had done, but I forgave him. Carrying resentment had already cost enough years. A year after the accident, Laurel and I returned to the maple tree on another bright afternoon. This time, I carried the drinks. I told her that the day she treated me in the emergency room had not changed my life simply because she saved my body. She had also forced me to confront the story I had been telling myself for decades. I had believed I was abandoned, when the truth was more complicated. I had believed silence always meant rejection, when sometimes it meant fear, loss, or words that never arrived. Laurel took my hand and reminded me that remembering someone was not the same as truly knowing them. We had spent a year learning who we had become, and somewhere between hospital corridors, dusty furniture, family apologies, and honest conversations, we had fallen in love again, perhaps not again, but properly for the first time. Before this story ends, leave a meaningful comment about someone you may have misunderstood, forgiven, or never had the courage to contact. Sometimes one honest conversation cannot restore the past, but it can free the future. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Laurel and I eventually married in a small daytime ceremony beneath the maple tree, surrounded by family, hospital friends, and people from the town who had watched our lives circle back toward each other. On a nearby table sat 2 bottles of lemon soda and both of our old letters, protected beneath glass. When Laurel walked toward me through the afternoon sunlight, I understood that second chances were not invitations to repeat the past. They were opportunities to meet again as wiser, braver people. The girl I remembered had once disappeared from beneath a tree, but the woman she became had stood beside my hospital bed and refused to leave. When she had whispered, "Do you remember me?" she could not have known how much the answer would change us. I remembered her, but love began only when I finally allowed myself to see her clearly. And after 22 years of missed messages, silent grief, and unfinished hope, we stopped waiting for the life we might have had and began living the one that had finally found us.